to what is the third and final leg of the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Organized Events. Feels like it's been a marathon to get this far, but I think they've all been extremely well attended as always, and lots of great conversations so far. So happy that everyone's been able to join, and I think tomorrow is the grand finale for the Brazil mining sessions and the Brazil Mining Day PDAC. But first, I'd like to thank Jeff and Miller Thomson for hosting us here today. I mean, I couldn't remember if we were here last year. We weren't. We were down a few floors, but those few extra floors make a huge difference. The views pretty spectacular. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Thanks to Jeff and Miller Thomson for your support over the years and hosting us the last number of years here at your office. With that, I'll pass it over to Marcy. Wants to say a few things?
Yep. Start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to say thank you for Minister Thomson for hosting us here today. And to say thank you for BCCC team for organizing this event very well. I think you are since yesterday discussing the future of the mine. Yesterday the discussion was great. In the morning with the financial panel as well. And here is more step about the future of mine. So shall we go start the event? Thank you. Bye. Be here.
Thank you so much. So Dan is co-chair of the Chamber, the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce. Marcio is chair of our mining committee and does tons of work behind the scenes. I am co-chair of the Chamber with Dan. So one of the things that we like to do is we honor where we are, and it's become unfashionable. You've all heard me say that we don't really talk about those things anymore. But I personally want to share this, and I want to share with everyone that we acknowledge that this land where we are is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the territory of Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe Chippewa peoples, home to the Métis and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. And at the BCCC, with our team, with our DEI team, we have actually come up with a DEI mantra, which we love to share. Together we stand as leaders, embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. We recognize that DEI is not just the right thing to do, but essential for our organization's success. We lead the change, understanding that diversity and inclusion practices must permeate all aspects of our business. By weaving DEI into the fabric of our organization, we cultivate an environment where every individual thrives and feels a sense of belonging, innovation flourishes, and collective potential is realized. Let us forge ahead, united in our mission to create a diverse and inclusive future that transcends boundaries and elevates us all. The other thing I get to do is I get to acknowledge some of the wonderful people we have here. We have Ambassador Enio Cordeiro, who is here from the Consulate General of Brazil, who has been a great partner of the Chamber, and I'm very grateful. We also have Vice Consul Leonardo Engi, who's really been jumping in with both feet and intending everything. And I wonder how I stay awake. I'm not sure how you stay awake, so it's exciting for that. We also have João Pires, Director of Mining from Ministry of Mines and Energy, right over here. We have Ana Rapeza from Apex, who is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and she doesn't know that yet, so I'm being weird. Igor Brandao, also from Apex, is here too with their whole team. Pablo Cazares from Ibram is here, and I saw him here. And then Flavio Mata from BNDES is here, and Marcos from Adimbi is one of our favorite people, as well as we have Sergio Havlicek, who is the Third Secretary of Mining, who is also here, who is way over there in the corner. We have to thank our sponsors, because without the sponsors, we don't have an event. And our diamond sponsors this year are Valley, who have been supporting us for the 50 years that we have been here, Aero Copper, Rio Tinto, also Miller Thomson, who has been just wonderful providing the support here, so thanks again, Jeff, for that. The Toronto Stock Exchange with Guillaume and TSX. We have Alvarez and Marcel, Infra, Anglo-American, Aura, Brazilian Nickel, G Mining Ventures, Itafos, Mellowhawk Logistics, Sarabi Gold, Wheaton Precious Metals, Brookfield, C. Steinweg, Meridian Mining, Wendell Hollanda for Scotia Wealth Management. Wendell, stick your hand up. Where is he? Wait, okay, you're way more important to be sitting over there, okay? So, BMA Avocados, of course, with Marcio and his team, INVR, and of course our partners with the DIMBY and APEX and the Consul General of Brazil. We're very grateful to have you all here. I want Jeff now to come up and say a few words because he has real content. So here we go, thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for coming to the event today. It's certainly our pleasure to host everybody. I think a lot of people are familiar with Miller Thomson already. We've met in the past, we've been to our events. Some of you are new, so for those who are new, we are a Canadian law firm. We have about 520 lawyers, 10 offices across Canada. We focus on all aspects of business law. We help with financings, debt financings, equity financings, securities, tax, employment, intellectual property, any business needs that you have in Canada. We can cover that space in our projects. I've been working in Toronto since 1994. I came first as an investment banker and then switched to law, and I've been back and forth between those roles a couple times. I joined Miller Thomson in 2016, so 10 years ago, and was the head of mining since then. I'm really proud of where we've brought our teams over the last 10 years. It's never been better, and the timing couldn't be better either. It's certainly a thriving marketplace right now for mining, and a great opportunity for our firm with the team we have in facing the capital markets and mining conditions that are present. And so we're going to talk today about innovations in mining and some critical mineral supply chain topics. And these are important topics that are going to help us in this changing world to try to help Brazilian companies and Canadian companies achieve prosperity. And there will be a lot of people looking for financings, looking for M&A partners, looking for joint venture partners at these meetings around PDAC, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what the purpose of the conference is and what we should be doing. It's a short-term focus, though. Often businesses and driven by investors are looking for the next quarterly earnings and looking at stock performances with 52-week highs and not beyond that. And so that's all important things to be doing. But I want to also talk about achieving long-term prosperity, especially with an audience such as this, as the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce. Because what makes a country prosperous in the long term? What makes a country wealthy? And look at some countries that are wealthy and prosperous with other ones that haven't been able to achieve that over the last 100 years. What are the difference makers that cause these circumstances? Economists study this. They don't all agree, but there's certainly some consensus around looking at the infrastructure that countries have and being able to build that prosperity around solid and independent and confident infrastructures, such as the rule of law, strong courts, strong, fair, and efficient capital markets, strong, great schools, great education, following scientific discovery and letting the facts speak for themselves. This infrastructure and having strong infrastructure is where countries tend to prosper. And so I encourage that we continue to keep that in mind as we do the day-to-day, the week-to-week, the month-to-month activities with our companies and think about what we can do to help with that. Certainly countries that are prosperous embrace free trade with countries and counterparties that they can trust. Again, this is where the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce can help with that, in embracing a relationship between our countries and with counterparties that we can trust and achieve success with. So not only take a short-term view this week in terms of achieving those goals, getting that PEA into a PFS, into an FS with the investors and the meetings that you have, but as this room right now is filled with leaders in the community, leaders in our countries, and look for opportunities to find ways to support, stabilize, and reinforce our institutions along the way, and we will have not only the prosperity today, but for our kids and our grandkids, and because it's those infrastructures that are going to help us. So that's an important part of the message and what this BCCC group and its members can do. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff, and I think that's an important message that he's sharing. This event, of course, couldn't happen without all the volunteers that we have, and of course the great team with Demas and Khalil. So if anything went well, you will absolutely thank them. If it didn't, if it fell apart, you can blame me. We also want to thank Paula Sad for all the work that she does for us, and in your team too. I mean, Gus is amazing, so thank you, and also Nori is just wonderful too, and wonderful contact. Now we have a real pleasure. Now I have a real pleasure to bring up Paula Azevedo, who has been a longtime friend of the Chamber with Sescom Berrio. She's an authority on mining, and I'm really keen to hear what she has to say as she introduces our first panel with Rafael. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. It's a great honor to be here once again in Toronto, taking part in the various events organized throughout PDAC. I see PDAC as much more than a business convention. It is a moment when all of us who work in mine pause to look one step ahead. It is also a space for strategic reflection, global engagement, and deep discussions on the issues that truly shape the future of our industry. I would like to thank the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce for the invitation, especially Peter and Khalil, for the opportunity to open this panel, which brings together experts for whom I have deep respect and who have contributed decisively to the advancement of our sector. The theme of our panel, Innovation in Mining, Social Environmental Solutions, could not be more relevant. Innovation cannot be reduced to technology. It is, above all, a response to growing global complexity, rapid market transformations, new social and regulatory expectations, and the need for business models that are more resilient, more intelligent, and capable of operating under conditions of certainty. Today, to innovate means think differently, revisiting assumptions, anticipating risks, implementing new financial models, and redesigning process in a constantly shifting environment. One that challenges companies to find new ways to create value, build trust, and sustain their social legitimacy. For this reason, innovation has ceased to be merely a productive lever and has become a central driver for competitiveness, governance, and sustainability. Competitiveness because it enables more precise and more efficient operations with lower cost, lower risks, truly intelligent production models. Governance because modern management approaches enable real-time monitoring, integrated risk systems, supply chain traceability, and advanced transparency tools elements significantly enhance our capacity for supervision, control, and accountability. And it is also a driver of sustainability because only innovation allows us to advance robust social environmental solutions, new tailings disposal routes, safer waste management practice, and waste reuse. From my perspective as a lawyer who has closely followed development in tailings and waste disposal safety, I can say that this agenda, especially since 2015, has become a top priority for mine companies operating in Brazil. In recent years, Brazil has significantly strengthened the regulatory framework, creating a robust legal system tailings disposal and align innovation with safety. Also, emissions reduction. Global pressure for mineral supply chains with traceable carbon footprints has placed the sector under intensive scrutiny. The question investors ask is no longer how much do you produce, but whether at what carbon intensity do you produce. Innovation is the foundation of the transition toward low carbon operation. As well as lower water use technology and land rehabilitation, more mature and responsible approach to community engagement. Sustainability, therefore, is no longer a parallel pillar. it has become an inseparable part of the business model itself. Given all of this, it is clear that the global mine sector finds itself a moment of profound structural transformation, moving from purely extractive operational model to based on integrated, solutions-oriented systems. Today, innovation and social environmental responsibility are no longer parallel paths. They are inseparable dimensions of the mining sector the world now demands. And that is precisely why this panel is so valuable. It brings together experts who combine deep technology knowledge with practical strategy insights capable of transforming challenges into real solutions for the sector. To guide this conversation with the deep and clarity it deserves, it's my pleasure to hand the floor to our moderator, Rafael Bank, the CEO of Proactiva, who will connect the rich and complementary perspective of our distinguished panelists and lead this essential dialogue on the future of mining. Rafael, the floor is yours.
Boa tarde, good afternoon, bonjour, Guillaume. Prazer, uma satisfação, it's a pleasure to be with all of you for this panel. Before that, Jeff, thank you very much. I don't know if Jeff is left. Thank you very much for the inspiring welcome that you gave to us, and I think you set the bar very high on what we want to accomplish in this afternoon. And thank you again for hosting us in this beautiful venue. Thank you very much. And of course, we had our initial speakers very humbly thanking many people, but since we are in the final stretch of our event, I would like to highlight the relevance of the work that Peter Hawkins, Dan, where's Dan?
He's with a client.
Dan is with the client making money, and Marcio, our chair of our mining committee, everything they've worked with the technical team to get where we are. So for them, a round of applause, please. Very good. I think Paula brought already a very inspiring setting also of what we want to accomplish in this panel. The mining sector, we were discussing in preparation for this panel with the panelists about the relevance of innovation within mining in all aspects. In mining and those who have also circulated and experienced other sectors, when they come back to the mining sector, they say, you're very hermetic, you're very confined in a mining bubble. How can you pierce this bubble and see other things and bring new ideas and innovate and bring novelty to what you do? And I think what we wanted in this panel is to think about innovation multidimensionally, multidisciplinarily. And this is why we brought this brilliant set of people stemming from different disciplines and from different angles of the mining sector, so that we could talk about innovation from these different perspectives, but with the essence of provoking the thought that innovation is a good thing, not only good but necessary for this sector, and above all for this sector, for all the challenges that it has ahead. So with that, let me invite my fellow panelists to come over to the table. So first, let me invite Ana Cunha. She is the Director of Corporate Relations and Sustainability for Anglo American in Brazil. The next person I'd like to invite is Bruce Keith, Co-Chief Sustainability Officer of Regia Capital. And Rafael Bittar, the Executive Vice President of Technical Affairs of Vale. And Ibrahim Faoud, Vice President of Business Development of Prodesis. welcome your panelists to this discussion. I think we've warmed up through our preparatory conversations on what to bring forward to this audience, and let's hit the road running. So I will start from my extreme left. Rami, if you want to kickstart with your initial thoughts, and we go from there.
Yes, absolutely. Great to be here. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for BCCC. And thank you to Peter, Khalil, and I don't know everybody, so thank you very much for this. So my name is Rami Far. I'm VP Business Development for Progesys. Just quickly to tell you on Progesys, we are a project management company. So we deliver complete project management and transition to operations. We work with clients from very early inception up to that transition. And the way we look at projects is from the lens of an owner. So we believe that for an owner, what you want is you want to control your development and you want to be close to it. Sometimes that closeness varies from client to another, from a project to another. And the key thing is how you transition assets into operations. So, when we build, we are investing, and usually growth is related to the future of companies, how important it is for them. For some companies, projects are a single asset, so it's a huge. So what you want is when you build it the right way, you want to make sure that it's operating right. So this is what we do. One of the things that we say, when we build, we spend, when we operate, we recuperate. So this is the time that you can get your money back, and everybody's happy as well. So my angle here, I know it was mentioned before. When we think about innovation, we're thinking a lot about equipment, technology, decarbonization. My angle is different. I'm going to be talking about delivery models in capital projects and the impact of that on the outcome for clients. And I know there's many different models to deliver. But when we think about the challenges, one of the biggest challenges, apart the technical side of things, it is really if the delivery model is matching the project itself. When we think about mining in general, we think that mining is already hybrid. You have projects that are very deterministic, or you are phased. The scope is very clear, not a lot of changes, and that could be a good fit for a rigid way of delivery. I know we can call it EPC, we can call it lump sum turnkey. There's a lot of things you can call it. But that I know we work in Asia, and this does work in Asia because sometimes the scope, there's a copy paste. We are building the same thing in many places. But when we look at the industry and where it's going, on the speed, on how we have to deliver to the market, especially on things like rare earth, things like getting copper or gold and those projects, I think you need a delivery model that will align and match with what the objective is. One of the other ways of delivering project, we can talk about Agile. It's really used a lot in IT projects. You do this, and the scope is always changing. So you have a big spectrum. We believe that mining is really very hybrid. So a project in mining scope can be changing at the beginning. You're going to permitting. Engineering is advancing, but you're waiting for final FID. You can start pre-works. So it is by nature a hybrid way. And the hybrid leads to fast track. When you're doing a hybrid, once that go is a go, it's a fast track. Everything is going at the same time. So one of the things that I want to bring is we think that when we look at the delivery model like EPC or EPCMs, EPC you're given the risk to somebody, but changes can kill you. When you look at an EPCM, you are regaining some control definitely as an owner, but at the same time, the risk is yours. But you are a bit far from the decision. We think that flow or communication flow is really governed usually by that model that you put forward. I want to talk about IPMT plus Agile, and maybe I'm going to give you a few examples a bit later on this. That we think is a model that can really support that mining projects.
Amazing, thank you, Rami, and we'll go back to you in the next round. And I think with the pressure we have for development of pipelines timely, with the pressure we have from the demand side, it's fundamental to think how to optimize processes and angles in project development. So it's very interesting what you're bringing for. Let's look back soon. Before that, let me ask Bruce to enlighten us with a specific angle of capital.
Thank you. I'm going to apologize in advance. I had a whole different set of talking points, but after listening yesterday to the group that the Chamber put together in this morning's roundtable, I'm trying to respond to what the Canadian audience is looking for, not what we're just trying to project. So thank you to Miller Thomson for this. Jeff, I think what you said about infrastructure fundamentals, Brazil has those. I think it's been building those. It's learned from past experiences of its own owners, but those fundamentals are in place. Thank you to the Chamber. I think what you put together has been fundamental as well. Probably the most productive interaction in business and finance across the two cultures that I've seen. And it's been really productive, so I'd like to thank you for that as well. We start off quickly with two little catchphrases that I think frame some of this, or sound bites. Finance moves at the speed of trust. That is it. Doesn't matter what else you have under it. If there isn't trust, your finance isn't moving. The people that we, and I speak from Brazil, I'm a Canadian, but I find my home in Brazil. People that we trust you. And the people that you trust us. So these are the elements to move finance at speed in the areas that we find to be a priority. Second, when we're talking about ESG, Sustainable Development Goals, DEI, these aren't catchphrases, these aren't sidecars. These have to be embedded in the financial analysis. You have to know how to monetize them and do them. Because as my friend Andrew told me this morning, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And that is absolutely priority right now in investing in any market. Canada has built amazing indigenous conversation frameworks to move programs forward, so has Brazil. If you're not at the table with these groups on the ground, you're going to be on their menu. Your projects will be stopped. Your investment won't have any value. So you really have to integrate that. So Beatriz from Rio Tinto had a great comment the other day on her webinar that the Chamber put together about embedding ESG as a fundamental. So these perspectives have changed what I wanted to talk about. But trust is there, but then there's innovation. This conversation about innovation and ESG. And in finance, innovation is what drives it. But innovation only works if you start from a basis of understanding of what you've done before. It's a chemical experiment. If you throw too many elements into a chemical experiment, you don't know what worked. What was the catalyst that made the difference? In Brazil, what we're doing is adding in ESG and other elements that are a single catalyst moving forward, built on the traditional investment and finance platforms, mechanisms that have always been around. So again, trust. I understand how money works, I understand how it flows, I understand these different markets. What's the next piece that I need to use to move forward? That don't change my experiment, it just moves it forward. So if we throw too many things at it, it's not going to work. We want a lot more. Here's a new single element, it's ESG, but it's got to be embedded financially. So what is the innovation we're talking about in Brazil? So I'm talking partly about our critical minerals fund, I'll get to that, but in general, what we're seeing across these markets. I spent 5 years before this working at the World Bank in innovative finance across these markets. And I see it happening in Brazil across the board. And what goes in Brazil is going to go for the world. And if we want to do things right, Brazil is where you start because of the natural capital and sophisticated markets. So in the innovation that we're talking about, sorry for reading from notes because it's changed a bit. You've got within Brazil, but also within your fund managers, within your bankers, within your partners, the means to have the financial architecture that you understand and trust and that can move forward with an environment that has the regulatory maturity at a global scale. Right? So it is a global peer of that. You've got the governance and social license then to move forward. So for example, with our fund, we're backed by BNDES. We're backed by the Brazilian government. It's based on their frameworks, their requirements. So if we're going to have social license and be able to operate within these jurisdictions, your biggest factor is the government is saying, what do you need to move it forward and how do we help? Here are the frameworks that we're going to require for you to operate here. So that's the fundamental. Then we have a partner like Vale, so the largest industry player in the country, if not the region or beyond, who says, here's how we've done it before. We understand your premise, we understand the government's premise, so we're going to anchor this as well. And then we've gone to institutional and retail investors in Brazil for further anchor. So you've got local money, local authorities saying, we believe in this, we trust it, and we're going to build it under an international framework. So now we're going as a fund, but also as a country, as an industry, to Canada, our most obvious partner, a middle power who straddles the geopolitical sort of schism right now perfectly, but is neutral, but aligned. We're saying, we've got the basis here to do it. The innovation is we understand how it works here, work with us to tell us how it works for you. What is that financial structure or financial architecture that's missing? I think you've got it. But listening to you guys, I know there's a little more to come in, and that's what we want you involved in. Not to be just at the table, but to be involved in what we're doing. But these are also investment grade vehicles. So Brazil has a very robust capital markets. It has under the CVM some really innovative financial tools and products that are investment grade that protect you, the international investor and partners, as well as the local players and those on the ground. And so you have bond-like structures that you can have international investors play into. You have equity plays like the FIP that our fund has. You've got Fiagros where you can securitize carbon credits coming out of resource projects. You can securitize the resource itself. You can securitize the future flows like you have with royalties coming out of here. You guys were innovators in that. Okay? How do we play that locally? So these are vehicles that exist already in Brazil in a sophisticated capital market that will protect your money as well. So you come in as an equal player. So that is the innovation, is that we've taken what works locally and reflected what it is that the international community is demanding and added in those frameworks. So, but when we look at ESG and the ESG metrics, we look at them as a financial logic, back to what Beatrice was saying. These are strategic and economic logics, not environmental. We have an administration just south of here who is antagonistic to environment, who is antagonistic to ESG, but deploying billions into critical minerals, into these areas, into these markets, because it's a strategic and economic play. Donald Trump might not like windmills, but all the elements going into a windmill go into your batteries, go into your cars, go into your defense industries. So it's a strategic play from them. This is not just environmental, but if you don't include the ESG as part of your metrics, you will be eaten at that table. So we decouple the ESG or the environmental play from the political and the philosophical. It is strategic, it's economical, and it just makes sense. And if you don't underwrite those in your analysis, again, you're going to be eaten at the table. So our fund is built on those insights. We are partnered with Oda Investments, who jointly have more than 25 years experience as an asset manager in minerals in Brazil. On the ground, the boots on the ground, the analytics, right, that have proven themselves over quite some time in that market with an international perspective.
If I just remind me of the time, yeah.
Okay, that's why I should have gone from prepared notes. So our fund basically embeds these ESG performances in them. Brazil is embedding them in the regulatory framework investment. What does that do? That unlocks the institutional capital and it reduces the structural risk in these. And these are multi-strategy approaches. So instead of investing in one mineral, one mine, one group, these funds, our fund, goes across the spectrum of those to assess risk and spread the risk and find these success stories sooner. And the bottleneck is not the geology or the jurisdiction. The bottleneck is properly financing that mineral development, which together we can figure out. So what we're talking about is between Brazil and Canada, you've got a fundamental geopolitical shift. You've got the Brazilian natural capital and boots on the ground with the sophisticated capital markets. You've got the resource capital international frameworks that Canada brings in. What does that mean? That is, this is the smart money that works with the right frameworks and the right pipeline with pragmatic leadership. I think that's across the board, not just for our fund.
Thank you, Bruce. This was very enlightening. I think I'll go back to you on your last point on the geopolitics of it. I think yesterday on the CEO roundtable, one of the points that was raised in Q&A was exactly what companies could do and what the sector can do vis-a-vis all the turmoil we're living in geopolitics, for good and bad for the sector. And I think it's interesting to hear from you what institutionally companies and the sector can do so that we generate the environment that Jeff was talking about earlier, in a conducive environment for these investments that you yourself will be doing in the country. Now, we'll soon have Rafael Bitar bringing a very interesting angle, but before that, let me go to Anna, who will deepen one segment of what Bruce was saying. Bruce was saying the relevance of embedded ESG in projects and a necessary part of it, as it is a financial component to it. And Ana Cunha has been working for many years in this field, and she knows what is old school, what is the trend, what is innovation, and I think she has very interesting examples of the house that is hosting her today, Anglo American, and I think Anna, maybe you can bring to us some of the cases that you've been dealing with.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, BCCC, for inviting us for be part of this panel. It's really happiness for me to be here with those so great professionals together having this discussion. And when you talk about innovation in mining, the conversation usually starts with technology, as we already said here, and also Paula brought in his speech. Automation, AI, digital tools, and all of this is really important. But as Paula also said, I want to use your statement, Paula, innovation can be reduced to technology. And I really would like to ask you guys, invite you guys to slightly shift the lens when you think about innovation and think about social innovation. In a conception of the term, because when you think about innovation, we are talking about something that we need to find new ways to really address the challenge that we have. But when the society is in the middle of this and the relation with people is the center of these discussions, I think things change dramatically in a way that we really. It's not more a matter of which technology we use. We are talking about how we are impacting people's life. And the real innovation on this for me, it's how we engage with society in general. The ways that we are finding to address the regulatory matters or the social pressure, or in the end of the day, our capacity as a business to be very profitable and really delivering what everybody, our stakeholders need. And maybe it sounds a little bit strange for some of you, because even though this speech about ESG and the needs that we know that ESG needs to be in the center of the discussion and all tables of decision making, we know that in the daily, maybe it's not how it happens. We are all the time under a lot of pressure with really tight timelines when you think about permitting, all pressure for reduced cost, pressure for delivered production, and being in this industry for more than 25 years, I always seeing all these topics tend to be more important in the end of the day when you really having your decision instead to really putting the ESG or all those impacts as not more important than this, but I'm sure that the future of the mine is not anymore about how or what we are producing. It's much more like how we are engaging and how we are becoming, possible this production be deliverable. Like the cost, but the human cost or the impact that we are making over the society. And it's easy to say, I know, and it's really difficult to do when we have all those things and this pressure of us as an executive that needs to make a decision and as a company. But we have no option anymore, to be honest. We're not anymore about like how it will be cost. It's part of the cost of an operation nowadays. And it's what makes some operation more challenging or not. I'm sure that for everybody here, like the main discussion that we have in a company nowadays is not anymore like the technology that we use for this or that, because we know how to do this very well. We know the solutions, it's like here for everybody. We can develop solutions on this, but the real challenge is how we are addressing the things that it's not really so black and white. The demands that we have for some communities, the difficulty that we have to leading with some FPIC, for example, how we are dealing with traditional communities, and how everything is really impacting our timeline in the end of the day. And I wanted to share with you guys one experience that we had at Anglo American 2 years ago. Anglo American just faced one situation in the permitting process of the second raise of our tailings. We will have to resettlement 400 families that are living nowadays in the self-rescue zone in an area that it's in our dam break for our permitting process. So we can imagine having to negotiate with 400 families with completely different characteristics, socio-economic characteristics, but a different profile. And something that we realized at that point is that we are not really able to do this alone. We really don't have the skills to do this alone. And it's important to recognize that as a company, a powerful company, we don't know everything, and we don't really have the tools to do everything. Maybe in the past, yes, because we will do in a way that we want to do, we'll not hear nobody, and we'll just make a decision and plan and put in practice. And it's something that it's impossible to do nowadays, really impossible to do. And in a way to achieve the best result, we decided to ask for help, literally, asking the SPA to help us to do this process in a negotiation, in a table with some other actors to negotiate. So we had more than 13 communities represented in this table. We have the municipality in this table. We have the environmental agency also in this table, the company and the SPA. It was easy? Of course not. It was faster? Also not. We took more than 1 year, 1 year and a half, doing more than 150 meetings, 2-3 meetings per week, meetings with 6-5 hours each, trying to converge for a better solution for everybody. Because in the end of the day, it's this like our capacity to converge in something, because we have also converging points, but we are completely different, so with different interests most of the time. But I think we were able to like put on the table something that is very important, that is the capacity to have a conversion for everything. If there is no converging in the points that we had to discuss, we really decided that we will keeping discussion until the point that we have a solution that was really fair and good for everybody. So I think it's really an example like how to do this using the theory about social innovation, but really put in practice the things that we love to say about participatory discussion, participatory committee, participatory making, the decision making. But in the end of the day, how you do this in a practical way. So in the end of all this process, we really realized that we made a very difficult decision, but the best one. That allowed us to have the best result with like much more strong in terms of perception for the society and everybody that was involved. And at the same time, give to the company a much more robust and secure ability to moving forward with the permitting process.
Excellent. Extremely interesting. Thanks for that. Oh, sorry. Thank you for that. Very, very interesting what you bring from a social emphasis and in the fundamental critical path of the project, the expansion, the operations of Anglo-American. I'll shift now to my chara. My chara. Rafael, yesterday we were discussing that when energy efficiency lowers bills, when circularity mitigates input volatility, when human rights diligence strengthens stakeholder trust and social license, the need for ESG adoption becomes obvious, even among those who claim not to care about sustainability. Going back to Bruce's point, competitiveness and ESG performance are now inseparable, and a lot of it is coming from innovation, right? The angles of innovation. How much innovation is transformative on processes, on outputs, on results, on new ways to do things that bring more efficiency and hence better return, right? So I think Vale has been leading this path, and I think you are the leader of this leading path, and it will be very interesting to learn from you some of these examples.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And first of all, I think that the mining industry is very innovative indeed. If you look, for example, the Vale case, how we can compete with our Australian peers? They are very close to China there. So we need to be innovative. When we decide to organize ourselves, like in corridors to have the mine, highway, or ports, develop our big ships, the Value Max, is to be competitive. It's innovation, right? So there's a lot of examples. For example, more recently, how can I adjust our portfolio to be more competitive, portfolio of products, to be more competitive with the Australian ones. So this is, in the beginning, for example, when we develop technology to concentrate our ore, this is an innovation, right? So we continue to be innovative. Just a recent example, we developed a product to paint our ships. It's a very specific marine coating that reduces the fuel consumption of 10%. Imagine, this is a huge impact because almost 100% of our ore moved from here to Asia. So it's very important to reduce emissions. Just one example. So what I'm going to talk here today is it's our vision for the mine of the future, right? I think that Gustavo showed us yesterday in his keynote briefly what are the pillars of that, and I'll try to present here some of the things that we are planning, and it's an important chapter of our strategy right now. So we have one chapter there and have this mine of the future. And we are working now with a lot of other companies to develop roadmaps for this strategy, right? We are developing roadmaps. We are putting together not only technology that's already exists for mining, but technology from other industries to the mining industry, right? So it's part of the work. And we can divide this in 5 pillars, right? The first one is the more easy to understand, is the
the intelligent operations or smart operations, when we can use and abuse of automation, of AI, of use of robots, bots, and a lot of applications we have. We already have in our operation, like the autonomous trucks, right? We already have in Valley today around 35 equipments, and we are moving now in the next 2 years to reach almost 100 equipments and autonomous trucks. We have drilling machines. We are doing a lot of work in our ports to be autonomous ports, right? In the stacker reclaimers, in the ship loaders. This is good not also for the efficiency, but to reduce people exposure as well. Safety is one of our priorities. And we have a lot of AI projects as well. We have AI applications from the exploration to the end of our supply chain in the shipments. So a lot of work has been done in this field, in this pillar. Second pillar is related to, I would say, precision mining, right? We need to be less invasive. We need to develop better mining methods. We need to use more GPS, real data analytics to be more precise, reduce the amount of waste to be generated. And we need, in the engineering phase, to have a better mining sequence when you can move, for example, the waste from develop part of the mine and they can start the closure, like a progressive closure that reduce footprints and reduce impacts. This needs to be considered during the engineering phase. Third pillar is related to carbon emissions and waste management. Indeed, our vision for the mine of the future is to be zero tailings. So we are working a lot on this through the development of co-products, reprocessing tailings, and improve recoveries, and mass recoveries, and metal recoveries as well. So just to open a parenthesis here, Rafael, we are very proud of what we are doing in this field, because we started what we call the Waste to Value program in 2024. It's for me, no, I think that's the biggest in the industry. I think that's unique in the world. In 2024, we produced 12 million tons of iron ore from the tailings, from waste rock and tailings. Last year, we doubled this. We produced 26 million tons of iron ore from tailings, right? And just as an example, this is bigger than most of the mines. We have 30 million tons, almost 30 million tons from tailings, right? And this reduce impacts, reduce emissions, reduce almost 50 million tons of CO2, right? And reduce areas for tailings disposal, and it's a very good option. So it's an important agenda we have, and we have plans to have at least 10% of our production come from circularity as well. It's a priority in our agenda. And in carbon emissions, we have a very comprehensive program, maybe the most comprehensive in the industry, and where we are developing technology to use ethanol in our trucks, right? Developed with the dealers engines that can be a dual fuel, diesel and ethanol. We are applying and testing more biofuels in our trucks as well, increasing the percentage of biofuels in the mix. We have a very comprehensive program, electrification as well. So we have a very important targets in this matter. And the fourth pillar, it's shared value, very associated with what Anna said here, share with us, right? It's really important the mining industry to move from what we are mining from, why we are mining here, right? We need to do this question here. And we need to share value since the first phase of the project, right? We need to have actual listening with the communities, right? And we have one interesting project to share with you is an innovation. We developed a technology with an university in Brazil to develop a product that we need to use in our operation. It's a dust suppressor and we develop a product that we can produce this from plastic bottles. So we develop this, and we increase our relationship with the waste pickers in the city of Vitória. They are collecting the plastic bottles, and this company will have a partnership produce the dust suppressor that we use in operations, and we're expanding this technology and this innovation to other operations, right? Because we have a huge demand of this product, right? And it's a way to share value with the communities around. The price that we pay, it's almost the double that we normally receive from the conventional process. So we are very proud of this type of innovation. And the 50 pillar that connect all of the other ones is the workforce of the future. In our plan here, in our work, what we can see is that in the future, or not in the future, the current moment, we need much more people that analyze data. Imagine, with this number of this new technology, we generate much more data. We need more data science. We need more process engineers to deal with all of this amount of data. But we need also a different profile. It's an innovation profile, right? Where the people think differently and to fix problems through technology, right? So just a summary of the things that we are doing here, and very happy to be open for questions.
Great, Rafael. I think it was a very concrete, or several concrete examples of how innovation turns problems into solutions, into added value in different segments of the business. And I think when we talk about innovation as a necessary dimension of the business, I think it's a fundamental factor to answer the question if we can respond to the demand boom we're going to have in transition minerals and these new challenges. So definitely innovation is an ally and a lever for us to respond to this challenge. Now, I received a message in my Apple Watch to stand up. Time to stand up. But, you know, maybe it's time to hurry up, I think we wanted to say, because I think we have just a few minutes. And I will have to ask the panelists to be very, very brief on their wrap-up comments, because if you are expedite on what you're doing, we will be able to answer a couple of questions. So let me ask Rafael, let's start here from you, and then we go all the way down. Just some few closing remarks, and then we go to a couple of questions.
No, maybe it's better to open for questions. Very good. Very good.
Anna? Any final comments before we go to questions?
Yes, I have.
Please.
Like,
please.
very quickly.
Yes, and Bruce, you're not escaping from my question about geopolitics and institutional issues in Brazil. And then Rami also, if you want to. Please, Anna.
Yesterday during Gustavo's presentation, there was a slide and a message, a very clear message saying being perceived as essential is not enough anymore. Because we love to say that we are an essential industry. And I think that like a question that we need to do for ourselves is, are we ready to redesign the way that we create value for the society? And it's all for me based in how we are doing and the innovation that we can create in our process.
So for me, just to conclude, I wanted to say something about what you mentioned about how we do things. I think, we say execution eats strategy for breakfast. So basically, I think we need to put the execution, how we execute things, in real life. just wanted to mention very quickly regarding the model of projects. One of the things we just concluded on one of our projects is Marathon Gold in Newfoundland. That was a project that started and it changed ownership 2 times, and it had it continued with the same governance. Project when gold was poured and we got to commercial production 3 months later, and it's being done in a different way than what we do usually. So I think this it is kind of an innovation and really executing on it. You know, it's not just putting the strategy and bringing people to work on it. So the owner was basically owned the risk in the project. So that's what I wanted to say.
Bruce? Let's kick off the Q&A with your question. Because I forgot.
You go ahead. You go ahead. Who will be next? Then we can already line up. Any questions? You can raise your hand, not everybody at the same time. Okay, let's start with Bruce.
So your question was about the geopolitics and what can the sector do to enable the environment that Jeff talked about. It's already there. In Brazil and some of the similar jurisdictions, those frameworks exist. Again, as I mentioned, we reflect a lot of how Canada developed. You have a very robust political market. In the sense that if you've got ministries that support this from top down, regardless of who is at the top. So BNDES is following similar policies and similar approaches that benefit the development that the previous administration was behind and supporting, and this one does. So regardless of what happens, second, you have a robust system of laws that protect your rights or allow you to enforce your rights or find remedy for your rights. Again, nothing's perfect, but when you compare it to other jurisdictions, it's very robust and very dynamic. So the frameworks are there from the politics to the system, but also the capital markets. And if Brazil in the late 80s can come through massive hyperinflation and figure out on a daily basis how to run its exchange rates and therefore how to run its economy, and they come through the IPO splash and dash and collapse, of 2008 to 2014, and put in the mechanisms to avoid that in the future. Say, okay, here's how the markets work, here's how this happens. It's got a very robust regulator, the CVM, right, that backs these things. It brings in the international best practices that fit the Brazilian market. So the frameworks that Jeff was talking about that enable it are in place. Education. Some of those amazing universities at a global level are in Brazil. I mean, Getúlio Vargas, UPI, these are bringing out high-end engineers, high-end educated people who can manage these systems forward across them. And they're all also internationally trained. I have to bet that most law firms here who work in Brazil have a Brazilian lawyer or two who's trained in Brazil but also internationally. Every law firm in Brazil has it. So you're recognizing the education system that's required for that framework, but it's also recognizing the international best practices that they can bring in. I see that across the board. So to your answer, what can we do to enable it is continue moving it forward. Continue building that trust between our 2 countries and our 2 operators, because that's already in place. Right? We've learned from certain mistakes, I say we as an honorary Brazilian, but we as Canadians as well. I mean, Gray X led to some fundamental changes in how we look at projects, right, and how they're reported and what's done. You don't move forward without those anymore. Right? So we've all gone through these things, but we move beyond them as well. That's the innovation, is figure these things out and see what's next and how you fix it. So Brazil responds to those frameworks. But it responds geopolitically. Sorry for the long answer, I forgot the geopolitical part. 2 relatively neutral middle countries, right, who are aligned, but aligned with where the world is going and can be buffers against what the extremes are happening in different places, especially just to the south of here. Right? So if you can play that geopolitical game, Brazil has a landmass the same as the United States, half the population. It's got a resource base greater than the United States that hasn't been exploited. It has the power to determine its own destiny based on international practices and choose the right partners like Canada is in being obligated to do certain situations. These things are in place and the maturity level is there. And again, that's why this partnership is critical. 2 countries who've been through it, who understand it, who can bring in the best practices that work for them internationally, but also on the ground.
Fantastic, Bruce, and I think you highlight the fact that the structures are there. If they are robust enough, is for us to ask and see if it is proportionate to the challenge. And BCCC is here. The PDAC will, and all of us go back home or back to our different countries, including Brazil. BCCC is here every day, right? So the structures are in place, but definitely there is always room to be strengthened. So if any of you is not a member of the BCCC, shame on you. But this shame can be dissipated if you quickly talk to Peter Hawkins and to Khalil and become a member. We have to strengthen these institutions that bring our countries together and get these two mid-sized countries that have so much in common, especially in the sector that we belong to, and make this happen, okay? So with that, any final questions? Please, Jamile. Jamile is our co-chair of the ESG committee.
I'll be loud.
How is that, the voice of our conscience, Peter?
Conscience of the chamber.
I don't know about being the conscience, but hi everybody, Jamile Cruz, with Rio and BCCC. Bruce, maybe picking up on what you just said and the reference to the webinar we did before in terms of embedding on the overall strategy, the whole concept of ESG and everything else, and according to what Rafael was saying as well. I agree with you. Brazil probably has kind of things to showcase, case studies and minds that probably are the best out there. I know for the fact that like what Pimenta shared yesterday, it's very similar with MRN, where ecological restoration processes are probably top of the world, but we still face a lot of challenges explaining Brazil elsewhere, right? The investments are not necessarily where we want to see. People are challenged on thinking of concepts of Brazil to the level of capacity and expertise and excellence that we demonstrate. How do we see, since you have like your honorary Brazilian side and thinking more broadly, we moving towards, I guess, systems like what Rafael was saying, like the chamber is one of the ways where we come here and try and showcase and explain to people what Brazil is and our excellence in mining. What else do we need to do? How do we put Brazil up there, not just for the fact that we have the critical minerals, that we have everything we need for the future of energy transition, but also showcase what we can do and hopefully get the investments where they need to be.
Bruce, TikTok, 30 seconds. Our time is up.
You don't have to, it's already there. It's trust. Finance moves at the speed of trust. You've got players on the ground who understand the local market with the international requirements. You got players in Canada who are looking to invest there. And exactly how Canada grew is how Brazil is growing. So those are in place. So use the chamber, use your law firms, use your other partners. Build those partnerships there. You don't need to build a big operation on the ground to deploy. You need to find the right partners who already can. And that's what these things are about. But it's based on trust. Everything else is in place. Like any relationship you have, do you trust the person you're doing it with? Everything else is irrelevant. And so I think all those mechanisms are in place. Nothing's perfect. I mean, Canada's not perfect. Brazil's not perfect. Working together with the right partners and that level of trust, which I think is easily built. Because Brazil, the chamber's been building it for 20 years, but there's a lot more actors out there. That's going to be the difference. But I think we have the means to deploy. So a lot of Canadian firms already down on the ground. Who are they partnering with? You have a fund like us that's backed by the government, but also partners internationally, bringing in the MPs to do so. You can trust that. We have colleagues who do this. It's a collaborative approach. Trust. Everything else is in place.
Thank you very much, Bruce. So these were Ana Cunha, Bruce Keith, Rafael Bitar, and Rami Faur. Thank you very much. A round of applause.
So with this session, we're going to be talking about critical minerals and supply chains. So certainly critical minerals have been very important for many years. Lots of people have had lots of discussion, lots of conferences about critical minerals and their importance. And if you ever see corporate presentations with companies in the critical minerals, there's lots of end user slides about automotive, defense industry applications and things, but we're going to be talking about how to get from the mine to those end customers, because that's part of the real trick. And certainly gold is very popular right now, $5,400 today, so they're doing well with the gold sessions at PDAC Upper Metro Convention Center. But I doubt there's a session on supply chains for gold. You make your dory bar, you can bring it to the local pawn shop and sell it if you need to. But here with critical minerals, there are specific customers that need to be satisfied. You can't develop a mine and sell 5% to the world market share, or 4% of the world, capture 4% of the world market share. You have to actually satisfy customers' demands. And if you make rare earths, if you make lithium, then you've got to be dealing with alloy makers, magnet makers, battery makers, and these customers require specific purity, specific concentration, specific outputs that are there to make their very specific customer satisfaction. And so this panel, they're part of that group who are navigating that complex web of mine to end product in the critical minerals space. And so I'd first like to introduce Frederico Bedren. He's he's the executive director of the AMC, which is the Critical Minerals Association. And Frederico, if you could tell us more about yourself and your background, and then introduce your role and how AMC is positioned in Brazil within the global critical minerals agenda, that'd be a great start.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation to be here. For me and for AMC's owner to participate of this wonderful panel. So I'm a geologist and lawyer. I work for the Brazilian government for 18 years, and now I am the executive director of the AMC. AMC is the Critical Minerals Association of Brazil. It's a new association, and we are working with, we start with 9 companies end of last year, and now we have more than 20 companies. We are working on promote the dialogue with the government, with the parliament, and on this case, I'd like to highlight the presence here of the Ministry of Mines and Energy, on this one, Giovanna and João Marcos. They help us not only to create, but also good support to begin this conversation and technical dialogue with the government. So I think that's very, very important. The conversation not only with mining companies, but the conversation with the whole chain. And our goal is not only promote this conversation, but represent the critical minerals companies and show the government, show the authorities what we really want and what we really do. Because the government authorities, they think that they can go from the raw material to the final product. They don't know what stage are between of these points. So this can be easy for us, but not easy for the authorities. So when authority has a speech, or we need to add value in our chain in Brazil, for example, they don't know how to do this. And we are here to do this technical dialogue to show that. As you know, Brazil has so many advantages like geological potential, neutral diplomacy, legal certainty, but have to improve more. And in our goal, the first goal is to connect not only the government and private sector, but the international institutions like the BCCC. For example, yesterday we signed MOU with BCCC And one more time, just to start, it's a big pleasure to be here and talk with you about critical minerals chain. And for example, we have here Lithuanian. Lithuanian is one of our founder companies, and it's a big pleasure for us.
Great. Could you tell us how Brazil can strengthen its role in the global supply chains beyond just extraction, particularly providing some comments about processing, value add, and downstream integration?
Yeah, is continue my first speech is very common that, and for me, for a Brazilian person, of course, important here, we want to add value in our country, but it's not easy. And what we are saying is that without mining, without upstream, we don't have midstream, we don't have downstream. So let's start mining, let's start do a good job, concentrate, then we can follow the next stage. You know that, for example, as my first example, beginning, looking at the railroads chain, you have the concentrate, you have the separation, metallization, and magnets. And now the Brazilian guys, oh, I want the magnets. Yeah, but to do the magnets, you need to separate, you need to do the metallization. And in this example, for example, on this case, for example, Ucor had a partnership with Meteoric to improve the chain and probably make the separation, and very interesting. And to add value in Brazil, Brazil is a very important player in Latin America, and our domestic processing is we have to work with this because we are a huge consumer. Industrial integration, we're working not only Brazil is promoting this, and the integrate of the chain. Would like to highlight, for example, Magdas is a program for a railroad chain that they put together the companies and the universities and the labs looking the whole chain in Brazil. And of course, the legal certainty for investments like refining in Brazil, or not only Brazil but the other countries too. The most important point is the legal certainty, and we will work with the authorities to make this happen, to have this predictable system to attract more investments.
Well, that's great. It's certainly very important to recognize that there's many steps that are in the supply chain and value add chain to go from mine to magnet, etc. What regulatory or structural improvements do you think are most critical to increasing Brazil's competitiveness?
It's a good question. We start to have this dialogue, this technical dialogue with the government. We start with 3 points. The first one is the mechanism of guarantee to investments. I think BNDES 05 was here, and you know more than the others. The Brazilian government has specific lines, specific funds to invest in mining sector. But looking this kind of companies, the pre-operational companies, for example, they don't have this real guarantee, and we have to promote a new mechanism to do this. In Brazil, we start a conversation, not only a conversation, but we have a bill in Brazil that propose a fund, guarantee fund, to make this happen. So we are starting with this first point. The second point is the environmental license. As you know, it's a very big challenge for every mining company. And this second point is very, very important for us. The states, the license procedure in the states are good, they're fast, but the problem is we have some interface with the federal institution and some problems, and what investor needs is need to know the specific time of this license, and this is the problem, and we are working hard to have this predictability on the system. And the third point is about value addition. This is the most difficult discussion in Brazil, not only Brazil, but I think in the other countries too. The world is discussing how the chain will be in the world in different countries, and how the United States and China and European Union are working, and Brazil, of course, wants to add value addition in Brazil, and we have a very good conversation with the Vice President 2 days ago, and we talk about this, and he highlight that that Brazil is looking the problem is to add value in our chain, and because of this, AMC, the Mining Critical Mineral Association, has to stay together with the guys, the right person to have a technical dialogue. For example, I visited the government so many times with UCOR visit, has an NHR, for example, had a meeting with them, showing this stage, showing how really is the chain. So we start with these first issues, these 3 points. So the environmental license, value addition, and mechanism of guarantee. And of course, we are trying to understand, not only trying to understand, but to put others trends like underground mining. Underground mining has a very huge challenge. That's the time that the employee had to be on the ground. In Brazil is a very big challenge to change this. You are working on this too. So we are starting in this short period of time. We had so good conversations. Our chairman is here, Marisa, the president of our board, and we're very, very excited what's happening in Brazil and what's happening with the companies. As I said, we are more than 20 mining companies, operational and pre-operational companies that are working together to build the critical mineral agenda in Brazil and help the government to make things happen.
Well, thank you very much for your insights. I'd like to move to your colleague on your right, Christina Bertoni. She works at Valley Canada. She's the head of global procurement and corporate supply chain at Valley Base Metals. And Christina, if you could tell us a bit more about your background, and then briefly introduce your role and explain how Valley Base Metals is approaching and increasing demand for critical minerals.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thanks for BCCC for being here and all the audience. It's really an honor. It's my first time here. So I've been with Valley for 3 years, and I can tell you that it's a very exciting journey. So I joined Valley in January 23, so right in the beginning of the carve-out. I think most of you have heard already why we carved out from Valley and all, but I can only tell it's been a very exciting journey to be part of that. The first thing that was done after the carve-out was to look at our assets and recognizing what Pimenta has been talking about. Our assets had I would say, substantial maintenance backup our equipment now, and we were drilling not enough. So there were many things throughout the company that needed to be done. So in order to prepare ourselves to face new portfolio now, we had to fix the basics before and do that with each one of our assets. And also, I think you guys have seen optimizing our portfolio. I can only share with you that all of the areas are in this transformational journey. And I think that as most of the companies being collaborative and working together with our partners as well has been, tremendous for these achievements. So I think you guys have seen our results. We are really with record production, record costs, coming out. There are some assets that we never reached such a high volume of production. You think about Long Harbor and Voices Bay. This is the first year that we're close to the nameplate. So there's still a lot to do. But after all of this transformation, it's time for us to look at our mineral portfolio. That I think everybody can recognize that what we have in terms of copper in Brazil is one of the best portfolios that you can have, and all located in Pará State. So after doing all of this exercising, just structuring the company, restructuring the company, having the right focus and having the right accountability within our organization, we're ready to start developing our new projects. This is the journey that we started last year to get prepared. And this year, we have a lot of projects in our portfolio that we're working, and we have different stages. Some are FEL 1, others FEL 2, going to FEL 3. And we're very excited about it. I don't know if you have seen, but today we produce around 380,000 tons of copper. And our ambition, or what we have in reserves, is we can bring it to 700,000 in 2035. So you can imagine the amount of projects. And just to emphasize, all of these projects, we own the mineral rights. And we have maturity in our exploration. So it's really what Alfredo was talking yesterday. We understand the challenges that we have in Brazil for licensing, and we also understand the role we play on facilitating on how the licensing, the requests are placed in government, and we as a company were learning how to better do that, how to better structure our projects in a way that we also look not only at results, but also into environmental, social development, so it will, enable us to get the licensing on time.
Thank you. What are the main supply chain challenges you foresee in the coming year, and where do you see opportunities for critical minerals mining companies and service providers going forward?
Well, I think everybody has been talking about it, and there was a good time. So I'm a supply chain professional, and I'm the one that was trained on just-in-time supply chain, logistics networks, all of that, and then the transformation, and then telling us, don't do that, that's stupid. You need to move to regionalization. You need to have the goods closer. You cannot do just in time anymore. You need to do a very smart inventory planning and safety stocks and all of that. So we had another shake last year with regards to tariffs and all of geopolitical. And we're learning by the hard way, I can tell you, all of us supply chain professionals. I think there's not a recipe, how to do that, but for sure we need to work very close to operations and to projects. We need to understand what is the planning. if we're not close to them and if we don't have reliable and, not only suppliers but partners, we're not going to succeed. Because having, the material close by, having our service suppliers sharing the same values that we have, depending on where we work. And I think you guys know that we have 3 operations in Canada and 3 operations in Brazil and in Indonesia, UK, and Japan. And and our customers are around the world. Yeah, we ship around the world. So it's crucial for us to have all of the partners well aligned, good planning, good understanding on the market, not only market intelligence for how we buy things or what is the price and when to stock, when to overstock or not. The logistics is also very challenging because we need to get our goods moving to our customers, and sometimes when geopolitics are, impacting some of the routes that our products go, we have some impacts. So we always have 2 options. We need to work on option A and option B. There's no way you can have a single source for any type of service or product anymore. So that is, I think, the challenge all of us from supply chain face today and establish its operations.
Yes, it certainly is a new era of supply chain management. And you've talked about security of supply and its importance. How is security of supply affecting your company's capital deployment on those plans that you have going forward on where you're going to be putting capital or raising capital, one or the other, and how you're going to fit that into your long-term strategies?
This is an ongoing challenge that we have. And as I mentioned just now, we have several projects to be developed in Pará and in one state, right? And it's the same state that Vale SA as well have a very significant operation. And we need to ensure that we're not competing internally as well. So that's one big point for capital. We need to ensure that we have construction companies available in Brazil, because after the car wash, the larger construction companies are not there anymore. We have another size, another type of construction companies that we are developing relationship and building, because we need to ensure that we will have manpower and capacity there. The other thing that we are doing, and I think it's a little bit about what you discussed, Rami, is how we do projects, how we do capital investment here in Canada or in Indonesia or in Brazil. We changed our operating model. We introduced an early construction involvement to deliver our projects. So we make sure that throughout the development of the basic engineering to construction and operations, we have all the important key players in the beginning taking part on the table. And with that as well, with the planning, we're also involving our materials, service providers, everybody together. So we're doing it here in Canada with Glencore on the nickel rim. We have an involvement of our suppliers just to help us to find solution, yeah? And in Brazil, in all of our projects. If I have answered you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're going to skip down to the end of the table now and talk to Peter Manuel. Peter is the Chief Financial Officer of Ucor Rare Metals. Ucor does business in Brazil. It's a Canadian company. And the company recently received an award from the TSXV for being a top performing company in 2025 for share appreciation. And if you hadn't heard of them, many people have now. They went up 1,100% in 2025. And so these are certainly the types of companies you want to meet at PDAC. So kudos to Peter and Director Stephen Weister in the audience as well. Congratulations, guys. So Peter, could you tell us some more about Ucor's decision to focus on critical minerals processing, and from Ucor's perspective, how you're positioning the company within the North American critical minerals ecosystem?
Certainly, thanks, Jeff. I've been with Ucor for 16 years and 6 months now, and for 15 years and 8 months of those, absolutely no one has wanted to talk about rare earth elements, let alone rare earth element processing. So, we speak to challenges associated with the supply chains, and for some of these, just recognizing that they exist is step one, and we've gotten over that hurdle anyway, or we seem to be starting to get over that hurdle. Ucor actually started life as an exploration company. We've got property in Alaska. That was the subject of a PEA back in 2013. As we were developing that, it became fairly painfully clear that even if we brought that to production, any concentrate that we generate is going to be going to China. And there's just this massive gap in the ex-China supply chain for rare earth elements, starting with refining. And the decision we took at that point in time was to shift focus. For that point in time, we scoured the globe for different rare earth refining or processing technologies. Came across a company in 2020 that had really developed a derivation of conventional refining. Solvent extraction is currently the go-to means of refining worldwide for rare earth elements. We've really got a unique means of mixing the liquids and the reagents that are required for that process. Allows us to achieve a faster throughput and allows us to compete effectively with China, which can be challenging, given their willingness, I guess, shall we say, to cut corners environmentally and in other ways. So we really focus on the gap in the supply chain that we saw at that point in time. And we're going about that, I guess, really in two ways. Like sort of overarching the big tack that we've taken is one, specialization. We're solely focused on refining, separation, and refining these rare earth elements to a high enough purity that are required. And we're also innovating, as I mentioned before. We're going about it with a unique means of processing, not a completely brand new technology. We're not trying to change the way the chemistry works, the molecules, or anything like that. We're mitigating our scale-up risk as a result of relying on proven chemistry that's been around for the last 50 years. Deploying this firstly in Louisiana and in the U.S., and then we'll look at the rest of the world from there.
Thanks, Peter. What do you think the key challenges are in building processing and refining capacity in the Western Hemisphere?
Again, I'm sort of attacking this purely from a rare earth element point of view. Certainly one of the most significant challenges is that we are really looking to establish an entire supply chain from the ground up. When we started down the refining path at Ucor, at that point in time, there was no mineral or chemical concentrate being produced in North America, and there were no metal or alloy or magnet makers in commercial production in North America either. So we had no source of supply and no customers, which makes for a big ask in terms of starting a business. So I think one of the bigger challenges is that we are trying to go from ground up and build an entire supply chain. And we've got to accept that not every mine, refinery, metal making, magnet making facility is all going to open on the same day. It's going to be an evolution over the next little while. There's going to have to be stopgap measures in place. Product's going to have to go back and forth. Concentrate may have to come from Brazil to Canada or the US. Oxides may then have to be shipped somewhere for metal and alloy making. And until we have the full supply chain, there is going to be stopgap measures in place. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. Obviously, the other one that everyone speaks to is just the raw fact again that we're competing with China, and you never know what they're going to do relative to the market. It's been interesting as of late in the rare earth sector anyway. You know, we've seen prices throughout the world, but in China in particular, creeping up over the last year to 6 months or so. But most interestingly, we've seen a complete bifurcation of pricing between China and the rest of the world. You know, for example, the dysprosium right now is selling in China at around $200 a kilogram. Outside of China, it's at close to $1,000 per kilogram. And that, quite frankly, mitigates one of the significant risks that we had historically in the rare earth sector anyway, being what's China going to do relative to pricing and product availability. The fact that we're seeing that bifurcation does insulate the rest of the world somewhat from those risks. So those are probably the main things.
Okay, great. How do you think Canadian companies and government and Brazilian companies and government could collectively collaborate to strengthen supply chain independence involving the two countries and attract global capital?
This is going to sound trite, but step one really is to recognize that everyone does have to collaborate. You know, as Rodrigo mentioned, you know, it all starts with the mining. Brazil's got some rare earth mining now, a ton of fantastic properties. You know, as of today, to my knowledge, there's no commercial rare earth refining or separation in Brazil, none in Canada, and limited in the U.S. You know, we're going to have to accept the fact that product's going to have to go back and forth. We're all going to have to focus on what we do best. You know, we focusing at Ucor in terms of refining in the U.S. You know, we've got to recognize we're going to have to rely on Brazil in the first instance for product. Down the road, there'll be properties in Canada. Certainly will be more in the U.S. But I think recognizing that very first instance that we've got to collaborate is the most important thing. Ultimately, obviously, every country wants to have as much value add in the country as they can possibly get. You know, ultimately, Brazil's going to want to get some of that refining capability. I'm sure ultimately alloy making, magnet making, and the rest of it. Everyone wants as much of a supply chain in situ as they can get. Ultimately, Canada's going to want that. The U.S. is going to want that as well. But where we are going from close to zero, trying to get to 100, we're just going to have to accept that that's going to take some time, and you know, accept that we're going to have to work together. I think if we do that, that allows the mines to get started. It's much easier to go from a mine and add on a refining step than to try to go build a mine, refinery, alloy, and magnet maker all in one step. And I think the industry is doing a better job of recognizing that fact, even sort of looking at some of the aspiring miners that we see in the juniors and that sort of thing. I was involved with Ucor back in 2010-11, the last time we saw their interest in the rare earth sector. And we saw sort of hundreds of prospective mines with preliminary economic assessments out there, and it'd be a 400-page document. And in the middle of the document, there'd be one paragraph that would say, and then we're going to refine and separate, and there'd be another paragraph that said, and then we're going to make alloys and magnets. And it's just not that simple. And I think collaboration really is what it's all about. As the industry evolves, there's going to be more opportunities in Brazil and Canada and the US for more in situ value add. And we just have to accept that that's going to take time and work together to get there so that we all get there again.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to introduce our next panelist, who's Blake Highlands at the center of the table here. Blake is the CEO of Lithium Ionic. He's also a professional geologist. And his company is building a lithium project in Brazil. So Blake, could you tell us more about yourself and your company's background, and then briefly introduce Lithium Ionic's strategy and how it fits into the global lithium supply chain?
Sure, perfect. Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting us and our team here. I use that professional geoscientist very loosely, but I try my best at all times. But Lithium Ionic is a developing, exploration, soon-to-be mining company. We are in Minas Gerais State in the Lithium Valley, really what's emerging as one of the most important lithium jurisdictions in the world, particularly from a hard rock perspective. We went public in May of 2022, and since then have defined roughly 70 million tons of ore, and I think we would have done even more had the market cooperated a little while longer for us here. And so we've used sort of the volatility in the lithium space to engineer one of our primary assets, the Bandera asset, the Gressoy, and we're looking to move through the permitting process now and into production next year. And that's really the key for us is we are still representing the upstream of that supply chain model we're hearing so much about here. And I think that we have a team that has done a very good job of starting to open up a new belt and a new jurisdiction that can be meaningful broadly to the lithium supply chain. We have a secondary asset in the Salinas region, right next to the Pilbara's asset to the north of us, and we're looking to move there next. And I think that's fundamentally what our company is good at, is continuing to find new assets, continuing to grow, and show that there is a new belt that can be globally significant to a burgeoning supply chain. It's been amazing that obviously this conference season continues to go on and on and on. And I appreciate you all being here to listen to us. But it's funny, I get to talk to so many people about how there are very few mining or upstream markets that continue to find new markets every year. I mean, we had the EV market show up and catch the world by surprise a little bit. Now we're seeing battery storage almost moving in to replace the EV market behind it, and robotics as well coming in. Sitting with a Chinese group last week in Florida, and they were talking about how big they think that market's going to be as well. And it's so easy to sit with people and just say that the upstream, it isn't there for that. These projects need to come online. They need to supply that material. We need uptick in refining as well to be able to supply that material and bring it online as quickly as possible. And there are very, very few places in the world that can actually move as quickly as Brazil, as Minas Gerais, and certainly as the Lithium Valley. And it's geologically unique. It's geopolitically unique. Trades globally. It's a trusted trading partner. And it's been really quite interesting for the company to be able to go around and talk about this belt that could compete with West Australia for being one of the most important hard rock belts in the world. So it's a very, very exciting time. We're seeing lithium start to come back into focus. We're living through the volatility of the space, but ultimately I think Brazil is going to represent the next great lithium push.
Thanks, Blake. You mentioned your company's moving from exploration to production. And what do you think the key challenges are that you and your company face when operating in Brazil, particularly in advancing a lithium project such as yours within the global supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'd say we're very fortunate to be where we are. Minas Gerais in particular is a great place to try to move a project forward. We've had great success and alignment with the state. And it's helped us lap the field in a lot of ways and move past a lot of the competition globally. So that's sort of a positive, obviously. I think something that is obvious when you're working on the ground there is it's young. It's a new belt. It's a place that people haven't historically turned to for lithium supply. And in that way, there's some growing pain. We have to find ways to bring multiple projects online. We have lots of companies that are all trying to do similar things. We have to communicate well, both socially for the stakeholders around us. We have to communicate well with government agencies and try to describe what it is we're doing next. And it's easy in any commodity to associate lithium with iron mining, base metal mining, precious metal mining. It's different, and it has to be looked at differently. There's an education process in that. I think what I would say is just how young this industry is, particularly in Brazil, and how it grows, but I think globally as well. There's a lot of education involved in that, and I think that probably is something that comes with the positive upside of a brand new jurisdiction where you have huge upside and opportunity. So I think that as we continue to grow, as the companies around us continue to grow, as large companies like Pilbara have moved into the region, it shines a light. It helps us get the messaging out there, and so every day it gets easier and more complicated all at the same time to move projects forward.
So as having a company that's a listed issuer here in Toronto, where do you see the strongest opportunity for deeper integration between Brazilian mineral resource development and a connection to the Canadian capital market?
Yeah, I think from a capital markets perspective, we're in a really interesting place. That if you look at who is currently operating or exploring in this region, there aren't many actually listed here in Canada. We're one of the few. And that's arguably, I don't know if it was the right decision, but it's been interesting. You know, it's a market that trades the lithium for the volatility in a lot of ways. And I think what we can do to help here is move projects forward and bring them online and show that you can have strong producing assets in Brazil, in the lithium space, that are investable to the Canadian market, not just something that you're the retail investor that sort of moves in and out of a volatile commodity. I think that that's something that we can help bring here, and I think it's important because Canada remains an extremely important investment community for commodities. I think we've seen the value of, if you look at Australia and how they've been able to get behind a lot of their critical metal projects, particularly lithium, they're able to support them in the market. There's a place that understands the lithium space, the hard rock space, and how to invest and the upside potential. So it's been much easier in places where there's a history there to grow a business and to continue to be successful from building market cap and showing return to investor. So we're in a lot of ways moving that along ourselves from an international perspective, and I think also trying to compete with Canadian assets that are further behind than us. So trying to tell a story that's different than the Canadian production perspective, right? These are longer timelines. They're different types of rocks. They're going to be handled differently. So I think that we can be trailblazers in the sense that we can show that there is a strong investable market here. That lithium is well volatile, both truly volatile, but also growing. The lows are higher than before. The market continues to improve, and that the Canadian market can look to Brazil as maybe the next phase of lithium, as opposed to looking to Ontario or Quebec for their lithium production. So very, very important for us to continue to communicate well to the Canadian market, this exchange, and be successful in putting projects in production and finding more and more.
Good, that's great, thank you. I'd like to introduce our last panelist on this session, and that's Dr. Mohammed Imran. Dr. Imran has a PhD in chemical engineering. He's the Vice President of Rare Earth Elements and the Chief Technology Officer with the Saskatchewan Research Council. And Dr. Imran, could you tell us more about your background and briefly introduce your role at the Saskatchewan Research Council and explain how your organization is contributing to rare earth processing and supply chain diversification?
Sure. Thank you very much. Really glad to be here. It's my first time attending this event, and great to see you all. About myself, I have a chemical engineering degree. Started with SRC back in 2009. It looks like quite a long time, about 16 years, 17 years. I started in the energy sector with SRC, but I remember in 2020, my current boss, he asked me to move into rare earth and take the position of the vice president of the new division that they built in 2020 based on the investment that we received from the government of Saskatchewan to build this vertically integrated rare earth facility in Saskatchewan. So I started my journey in rare earth from there. At that time, we were only a group of 7 or 8 people that joined this division, and now currently we have about 150 members of my team who has been instrumental in developing this rare earth sector where we are today. A very quick about Saskatchewan Research Council, who we are. We are a Crown Corporation, basically owned by Government of Saskatchewan, and we offer scientific solutions to 4 key industrial sectors: energy, mining, environment, and agriculture. And in the rare earth sector, we have been serving the industry for the past 17, 18 years, again, helping on the upstream development, on the midstream development. That's where we build the knowledge base. And in 2020, the government of Saskatchewan, they decided to invest in this sector to demonstrate the techno-economical viability of processing rare earths in Canada. Like Brazil, Canada also is quite enriched when it comes to the rare earth resources. I think we stand at around 5th place across the globe. Great resources, but still it's mostly hard rock mining. Not like Brazil, where we have the heavy mineral sands, and that makes the life much easier compared to developing a hard rock mine-based resource. So the government key objective was to demonstrate techno-economical viability and also to offer route to the market to the local mining sector when it is developed. So it was our mandate to establish this rare earth processing facility in Saskatchewan. When we started, we were going to look into primarily hydrometallurgy and separation. But in the past 5 years, the way this industry has evolved and how this volatility has exploded within this sector, we ended up now doing 11 distinct things to address a number of challenges that we face during this execution period.
Well, that's great. So could you be a bit more specific on the specific technological and infrastructure challenges that are involved in developing a competitive rare earth processing capacity outside of a dominant jurisdiction like China, and here in Canada, or perhaps in Brazil?
No, that's my fellows have been talking about the challenges in the rare earth sector, and it's an emerging sector outside of China, right? And with the emerging sectors, there are challenges across the whole supply chain. That is quite obvious. But when it comes to technical, yes, we have faced some of the very, I would say, hard issues when we started executing this project. So we received the funding from the government in 2020, and now we are in 2026, and our facility will be starting the production hopefully by the end of this year. And you might ask, well, why it took 6 years to develop this processing sector? And that does associate with the challenges. Our first challenge that we hit was our ability to get the technology surrounding the separation of the rare earths. And when we started it, our plan was that we are going to get it from China, but in 2020 there was an export ban from China on the technology, which was probably the best thing that happened to us, because we started to look into developing that technology in-house. We spent almost 2 years on quite extensive R&D, and we ended up de-risking it to the point where we not only addressed the technology issues, but also the equipment issue. So if you compare, we based our separation technology on the solvent extraction, which is not new. The process is not new, but what the new is how to get to the end product at the right efficiency level and at the right purity level, and getting the different rare earth elements which are required for the separation. We all know that there are 17 rare earth elements, and maybe only NdPr, the 2 are the most talked about, but I think in today's world, every rare earth element is quite critical. So we did spend a couple of years, and now SRC is probably one of the very few jurisdictions who has the capability to design and build the solvent extraction cells that function to the point, as I mentioned, getting the very higher level of recoveries and the efficiencies. The same concept, the same theme we applied towards
the metal smelting or metal manufacturing technologies, because as I said, when we started, we were going to do only the hydromet separation. But now currently we are doing hydromet separation, metal smelting, tailing processing, recycling, or reprocessing, because the rare earths are radioactive in nature, and that comes up with its own challenges. And we encountered the same thing. We were losing a lot of rare earth during the separation process in hydromet, now hardly exceeding 70%. And that also led to the innovation of the new methods, where we develop our own process to reprocess the tailings, which gives us over 98% recoveries, and it also gives the ability to produce uranium and thorium as a byproducts, which are the sellable streams. Extending the challenging theme towards the metallization, as you might all know, that the metallization is a process which is probably 99% controlled by China, and it is done in China, Thailand, and Vietnam, which is also very closely related to Chinese. So if we are looking into ex-China processing of metallization, that is probably not existence so far. We started looking into producing commercial scale metals in 2022. And at that time, we were able to hire a consultant from China who knew how to produce metals. But the challenge we had was he was not able to convey why. He can only tell by the color that the metal is ready. So we spent about 6 months with him, with our teams working in the shifts. And every time he would come and say, oh, metal is not ready, keep going. Or come and say, metal is ready. So it was very difficult related to how we build a knowledge base or a team which is skilled enough. And that ended up us moving into manufacturing those smelting equipments, but equipped with artificial intelligence and automation. Because what that does is tells us all those questions which we were not able to get the answers from those consultants, like it depends on the cutter. So long story short, we do have our own metallization units, which we fabricate most part of it within Saskatchewan. We have our solvent extraction units, which we fabricate in Saskatchewan, and a lost part of it. When we started our solvent extraction journey, as I said, we spent about 2 years on the R&D. We built some commercial scale cells, and we were looking into the separation. And having 6-7 people in a shift working on a bank of only 6 cells, it took us over 6 months to get to the steady state. Extending that number to a commercial scale facility equates to about 100 people having operating these solvent extraction cells. That was a big challenge in terms of being competitive with the very volatile market, as we see the impact from within the market. So we ended up having our own artificial intelligence-based control systems, and the instruments that require to generate the data that feeds to the AI brain, we also develop those in-house. So what that does is that reduces the need of the 120 people to operate the SX cells, basically down to nothing, nobody. We only need people to look into the mechanical failures, but for the process, it is self-sufficient. It can operate it by itself. Our facility currently is in the final phase of the commissioning, which is going to be wrapped up by the end of this year, and it will be coming online early next year.
Okay, great. If you could answer this next question briefly, it's great. I have the flag for time on this session. So, where do you see the greatest opportunity for collaboration between the upstream Brazilian mineral resources based in rare earths and Canada's emerging processing technology and innovation?
Yeah, I think what Canada can offer is a lot of experience on the mining side too, right? Like being with the research organization at SRC, we have been serving the mining sector for over 75 years, and there has been a lot of evolution when it comes to mining. I think your question about not sending the people underground in a mine, Canada faced the similar challenges, and they have come up with a very smart solution using the robotics or using
using the vehicles which does not need human to operate, and it can be remotely operated. The similar thing extends to the application of the in-situ mining or the smart mining. So there's a lot of knowledge that can be shared, that can be transferred. One thing which Brazil has on this, especially on the rare earth resource, as I mentioned before, is having the ability to produce the rare earths from mineral sands. And that is a big blessing. We can see that we don't have that in Canada. We have these hard rock mines, which does require 7 to 10 years of minimum duration and substantial investments to do it. The learning, the knowledge which Canada has on the ESG side of things, because when we established our facility, we were very, we paid a lot of attention to details when it comes to ESG. For example, not recycling a single drop of a liquid. All the chemical, all the water is being recycled. When it comes to the emissions, we have developed a lot of state-of-the-art technologies to make sure that the environmentally, the air is not being contaminated. So if I pick one theme, I would say it's based on this knowledge base that Canada has built, or Saskatchewan SRC has built. There could be a lot of collaboration based on that.
Great. Well, hopefully you can meet lots of people who would be interested in that during this conference. So I'd like to move to a lightning round right now, because time is of the essence. So I'm going to have one question, same question for each panelist, and they can ask to try to have a one-sentence answer to the question. What do you see as the most urgent priority for Brazil and Canada in order to strengthen critical minerals supply chains over the next 5 years? So in this lightning round, let's start at that end of the table and work this way.
Okay, if I can choose one answer, it's not only technology, as you said, but should promote finance opportunities to make to build these projects in Brazil. Brazil can be a global hub for critical minerals. We have all conditions, and of course, Canadian can be is part of this.
My opinion is with regards to education. I think Canada, when I compare, it's more robust. The knowledge here, so I think a good exchange in knowledge in several different minerals and mining methodology would be crucial. As you were just talking about, underground and all, I think education.
I guess I would put to continue to build a supply chain together, and I think when I think of Canada, obviously, and Canadian, I think there's a massive opportunity here, given some of the difficulties in some of our trade agreements and what we're looking at in the next few years ahead of us. There's a real opportunity here to build an extremely strong trading relationship, build out a supply chain that helps stabilize pricing and ultimately rely on Brazil to supply some of the lowest cost, highest quality material in the world, and that would be my take.
Yeah, Brazil, what they have in rare earth sector, 25% I think of the world resource. And currently, if we look in the market, how much is coming out of Brazil is, I think, it's less than 1%. And I think the integration of the upstream and the midstream capabilities and looking into pushing it at the right pace, because time is everything in this industry. So that collaboration in that front, that how we can reach into a point where the supply chain is sustainable and reach to that point really quickly, that's what I would say.
Peter?
I'm going to go in a bit of a different direction here, and let's just play to each other's strengths. As I say, Brazil's got some fantastic resources. Canada's got some capital markets that are designed very well to fund mineral exploration and development, and let's put the two of those together and play to each party's strengths in the immediate term, recognizing that ultimately we'll have full supply chains in both countries, but it's going to take some time.
Well, thank you, Peter, and if everybody could thank our panel.
So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is João Alzo. I'm head of mining practice at BMA Advogados in Brazil. I'd like, first of all, to thank Miller Thomson. Geoff, thank you so much for this beautiful place. Thank you, BCCC, for the kind invitation to moderate this panel. Thank you for our dear panelists for accepting the invitation. And the so little of you that managed to stay here until the
Other ones are they're coming in, but just let's go.
Thank you so much.
This stuff, and I'm ready.
We will now have a conversation, and the idea is to be a conversation, so it's a fireside chat on Brazil's current mining landscape, covering recent regulatory and institutional developments, the investment climate, and concrete opportunities to strengthen Brazil-Canada collaboration in the global mining sector. As we are all aware here, mining is one of the most relevant economic activities in Brazil, a real backbone of the country economy. Brazil is a resource-rich country, but that's not just it. We are a stable democracy with stable and long-lasting mining laws. Despite that, there's still room for development, especially when we look at critical minerals and the need to attract capital and put new mines into production in record time. To explore all of this, we have assembled three exceptional group of practitioners and thinkers here. We have the ladies first, Rafaela Guedes, Senior Fellow with SEBRI, who will offer some analytical lens of Brazil's leading foreign policy think tanks. Right on her left, Stephen Keefe, Head of Brazilian and African Operations at Itafos and at the Board of Directors at Aura. Mike Hodgson, CEO at Serabi, who spent decades building and running gold operations in the Amazon. And last but not least, Felipe Cunha, Head of Mining Practice at Bichara Advogados, who will bring the legal architecture review as a partner at one of Brazil's most respected mining law practices. So, guys, we are way ahead of time, so I would kindly ask for the answers to be as brief as possible. Rafaela,
Can I interrupt for a second? What you have to say is important, so please fulfill your thoughts, okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and one more thing too, we are recording that, we share this ultimately too, so please do not, cut things, because we are glad you're here, we're thrilled you're here, we want to hear what you have to say, so don't think of that, please.
Rafael, could you kindly briefly share SEBRI's perspective on Brazil's geopolitical positioning in the global mining landscape? And I know that probably what you draft is already outdated considering what we are facing right now, but please.
So I'll try to do both, like be really something interesting but not taking way too long. But especially because most of all thoughts, all the panels here, I think that a lot of the geopolitical positioning and why Brazil has been already tackled. But if I had to say, reinforce that for a while it was about critical minerals, but now we're talking about strategic supply, we're talking about security, and as anyone can see the news, as well as mining, the energy security is important. More and more the mineral security will be for several reasons. So when that's said, when we look into critical minerals, and as within SEBRI we have been doing a lot of work tackling supply and demand in Brazil. What does Brazil has to offer the world, and how does it differentiate other parts of the world? I'm proud to say that for many of this, and we can tackle niobium, but we can talk about lithium, copper, rare earth as being the second largest reserves. There is a lot of resources, but not only resources. as we speak, and I'm happy because government's not here anymore, but we're working closely with the Brazilian government on helping lead the national strategy and policy for minerals, but specifically for rare earth. And in this topic, as we speak and go and travel Brazil around, Goiás, Minas, but the north, definitely Pará, where many assets are, we see there is a lot of opportunity, and not only to explore, but also technologies that are coming along in order to help process these minerals. And of course, this is the big challenge within the processing this. And definitely, what everybody's up to, and that's the most challenging, is where can we get to this win-win situations in which we can do things in Brazil, but of course it's not going to be also just about Brazil. So how Canada and Brazil can work together, and until where one goes and where starts the other. And the same thing with Europe and US and China. Why not? I think that it is a global, and we have to be thinking this strategically. So that would be my initial thoughts, and I do believe that Brazil has a role to play, and we're really working hardly so that we can have predictable regulation, transparency, efficiency in permitting, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafaela. And Stephen, you have a very interesting background of bringing interesting minds into operation. In your view, in practice, how do you experience Brazil's regulatory environment? What are the main operational challenges, whether licensing, community relations, infrastructure access, and how have you navigated this complexity?
Okay, so basically everything. So look, Brazil can be a challenge. You know, those are some of the key issues: environmental and permitting. You know, from our point of view, the bigger issue, so you've got licensing, which comes with environmental and permitting, you've got the community issues, and you've got infrastructure. And frankly, those are kind of the three fundamental pieces for me, obviously the project. I think the way I always try to look at projects is can the project actually be built? Is it real, and can it be done? So, you know, that has to take all those pieces into account. The issue with Brazil, with respect to how do I experience it in Brazil, the regulatory environment is really complex. Each state is different. You know, permitting in Tocantins is very different from permitting in Pará. Plus, you have the federal agencies. You have to work with the IBAMA. You have to work with the local communities and the municipalities. So at the first level, the permitting can be an issue, but at the same time, if you're someone who's tried permitting projects in Canada or the United States, I love permitting in Brazil. And although it does come with its issues, it's just a matter of doing it properly. I think companies, especially the smaller size companies, especially the international smaller size companies, tend to do things with an outside perspective. And that's why, you know, in past conferences you hear a lot of complaints about Brazil or why smaller companies have failed in Brazil. That's, to me, it's not a Brazil issue. It's a not being Brazilian issue. It's not using enough Brazil talent. You know, the company I'm working with now, the asset that I took over was a twice bankrupt project. And what I realized after 10 years of other people running it is I was the first person that even spoke Portuguese that was made responsible for the project. People were trying to design this with other plans, design systems from other countries. Where I came in and I found that the team knew exactly what they needed to do, right? When you talk to the board in the United States or Canada about what the permitting process is, they run away and get scared. Local operators look at it and go, they know what to do. Like there's a clear process. It can be convoluted. But then from how do you manage it, you have to start that at the beginning. Start day one with the community. If you don't have the community on board, you will not get your project built. And you do that on a daily basis. You put your money in, you put your team in. With the regulators, you have to work closely with the regulators. Like inform them. You want a very open and transparent relationship, especially with IBAMA, right? We are in an industry where, you know, there's a lot of risk. Problems will happen or can happen. And the closer you are, the more transparent you are, the easier it is. So, you know, it's very doable. And again, I've never really had an issue, but with Aura, we bought a mine a few years ago. We sort of looked at the resources like half the size as we knew it was because there was a road that went through it. previous owners couldn't do anything with that road. Or is almost entirely Brazilians, operating in Brazil. What happened? They took over the project. First thing they did is work with regulators, government, municipality, whomever, to figure out how to get that road moved. It was a highway, and they'd come up with a deal to move that forward. So it's just a matter of being present, being as Brazilian as possible, frankly, and working within that knowledge. And then the final piece, I know you said be short, which I can't really do, sadly. But the other big issue is infrastructure. So if you can navigate the environmental, bring in the right partners, bring in that side, but infrastructure is an issue in Brazil. The ports are not very efficient. If you're going into the interior, getting stuff into the interior is not very efficient. The rail system is not great, so you're using trucks a lot. We still haven't fully developed the river highway infrastructure that has been talked about for a long time. That adds significant cost, and it's something you really, really need to think about. But so, when you're looking at your project, how do you get it permitted? How do you work with those groups? Are the communities on board? And then how do you get material in and out of your project? Those are the questions you asked. I think those are the right things to look at, but very doable. But the infrastructure is cost. So you just got to make sure you know the cost of it.
Great, thank you. And Mike, CeraVe has been operating in Brazil, in Pará, for over 2 decades. What keeps the company committed to the country, and what has changed for better or for worse in terms of business environment and project viability?
Well, it's changed a lot in my time. I joined the company in 2008. I became the CEO in 2010. And back then, we're in the Tapajós in northern Brazil, in Pará, and was a very, very undeveloped part of Pará, an extremely undeveloped part of Brazil. And I've probably seen huge change in the last 5 years, maybe 8 years, paving of highways and essentially making life for us a lot easier. Back in the day, it used to take me from Itaitu probably 14 hours to get to site on a federal road, the BR 163, which was just essentially impassable in the rain. Now it's a paved highway, it's a toll road, different world. And with that road came power and infrastructure, population change, more professionals moving into the area. So it's a lot easier. When CeraVe's been in Brazil before my time, came to Brazil as an Australian private junior, into a prolific area of gold mining, artisanal gold mining. That's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's you've got, obviously, because of the infrastructure challenges back in the early 2000s, there was no systematic exploration at all. So your garimpeiros, your artisanal miners, were your geologists. These are the guys that found you in the deposits. But the trouble was, they also left an awful mess, and gave mining, essentially, as they do all over the world, a bit of a bad name. So it's, good and bad. But you cannot overlook the fact that 30 million ounces of artisanal gold was mined in this region. So that was the desire for CeraVe to go there and stay there. And we've worked very hard to put our first mine and keep our first mine profitable, with a break, but essentially over 20 years. So it was hard. I mean, back to your comment about stakeholders, absolutely right. If you don't have your stakeholders with you, you're lost. I work for a number of places over the world where that hasn't been the case, and you labour away. But if you haven't got the local people, the hearts and souls of the people with you, you're lost. So by being there for a long time, we earned a good reputation. That was essential when we actually took on our second project, which was we purchased from Equinox, Coringa, and that's been hugely successful. And we're now moving that forward with Boneting success. But it's been tough to get that reputation and develop those relationships in the tough part of Brazil that didn't have good infrastructure and was very undeveloped. So I think we don't say we're a Brazilian company. We say we're a Pará company. That's where we are based, and we've kind of thrown our, we've decided that's where we're going to stay. There's enough opportunity there for us. So certainly that's we're certainly, as I say, we've been a long time with that reputation, and we want to nurture those relationships which we have with the various authorities in Pará. It's taken a while, but we're there now, so we're benefiting and leveraging off that. So that's why we like Pará.
Great. Thank you. Felipe, how would you compare the regulatory and permitting frameworks in Brazil and a little bit of Canada, and where you see are the key friction points? I mean, we tend to look to Canada as almost a heaven place where everything works perfectly, and it just doesn't seem to be the case. So if you could give us your thoughts there.
Sure, thank you, João. I want to go into the legal talk because I don't want to bore anybody in the room. But if I had to summarize that answer in one sentence, João, I would say that both Brazil and Canada, they are demanding jurisdictions. And the difference lies on when risk stabilizes. I'll break it in two blocks here. So first one, both systems are built around the same pillars. So environmental accountability and consultation. So both in Brazil and Canada, if you want to permit your project, and Stephen just gave his statement here, you have to go to robust environmental studies, consultations with affected communities, consultation with host communities, consultations with traditional communities, and blah, 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 blah. But the difference is that in Brazil, risk, it takes some more time for risk to stabilize. In Canada, although the process is long, once you reach certain milestones, then risk stabilizes. In Brazil, that's not exactly the case, because I always make a joke, see, when's the right time to pop the champagne in Brazil? Did you get the LP? No, someone can challenge your LP, yeah. Did you get your LI? No, someone can challenge your LI. So risk in Brazil takes more time to stabilize, but the key, and I fully agree with you, Stephen, is stakeholder engagement, because as early as you engage with stakeholders, the more robust your process is, not only from a technical perspective, but from an institutional perspective. You need to have everybody on board very early in the room, so you can de-risk your project properly, and you can finally pop the champagne at the right time. So I think that's the key difference, John. So it's exactly where the risk stabilizes.
Great, thank you. Mike, we've seen significant volatility in recent increases in precious metals prices, reaching many times all-time highs. How do you interpret the current cycle, and what do you see coming next for gold markets, and how do price movements influence capital allocation, project expansion, and investor appetite for Brazilian gold assets? A lot there also.
If I knew the answer to that question, I wouldn't be sitting here. There's people paid a lot more than me to actually forecast what would have happened with gold price, and they got it hopelessly wrong. So I look, it's the usual, deglobalization, de-dollarization, etc. is driving this, and obviously, central bank purchasing, etc. of gold. For us, it's been we're probably not working any better than we were for the last 10 years. We're producing a little bit more, but it's absolutely changed our world. So we're essentially. I was going to talk on my final question about capital markets, but we're in this very enviable situation now where we don't need any money. We're a junior that's actually really generating a lot of money and enjoying a world that I've never experienced. I've been in this industry for 44 years, I think, and generally 42 of them have been pretty bad. And the last two have been remarkable, the last 18 months, let's say. So we're funding our growth entirely out of our cash flow. We can drill as more holes than you can imagine. We're organically growing the company as fast as we can. Our two assets. We're funding all of our plant expansion and everything out of cash flow, which was unthinkable 2 or 3 years ago. So that's what it means to us. It's been an absolute incredible change for us, and long may it continue. Amen.
Let's hope so. Felipe, back to you. What improvements in regulatory clarity or institutional coordination would most enhance cross-border mine investments in Brazil and Canada?
So, first of all, Brazil is not a country lacking rules. We have many of them, right? Brazil is a country of managing complexity. So, because there are so many rules and so many stakeholders interpreting and interacting, sometimes in not a very effective way, that it's complex to navigate into the system. So, and cross-border investment, as Bruce mentioned earlier, is about confidence. So you invest when you have confidence that what was promised to you was delivered to you. And sometimes in Brazil, what happens is kind of, among most Brazilian people here, we're playing soccer. So someone told you the rules, you are put together a team, you put together a strategy, and when your striker, Ronaldo, is ready to score a goal, it feels like someone moved the goalpost to another location, right? So, and this harms trust. So I don't think Brazil, again, is a matter of us enacting more rules, because we have lots of codes for laws for everything. The issue is how to put all the stakeholders together on the same page to advance the project, because capital does not fear rules. Capital likes rules if the rules are followed, if you have predictability. So I think what can be done, and we as involved in the Brazilian mining industry, what we can do when we are on our works on our companies and the discussions forums that we have, is to foster this dialogue with regulators, with multiple stakeholders, that we will only unlock Brazil's beautiful geological potential for critical minerals, precious metals, base metals, and etc., 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 if we have together trust. If we have this, we have, again, good systems, but we need these systems to work on a coherent way. So I think that's the key point. It's enforcing, is fostering trust, confidence in the system.
It's just a shame that the prosecutor's office is not here.
That's why we're taking it.
And Stephen, Itaúsa operates phosphate assets in Tocantins. How do you assess Brazil's attractiveness for investment in fertilizer, minerals, and other strategic commodities, considering both the geological potential and the policy and market conditions?
Great question. So from a fertilizer point of view, it's fantastic. It doesn't necessarily have the geological wealth that we would like in the fertilizers, sadly, because you know, the potash is running out. It's very hard to get at, exceedingly expensive, or in the wrong place. The nitrogen is made cheaper by by dozens of other countries, so it comes from everywhere else. But there is phosphate in Brazil. More importantly, there's a market. Brazil is one of the largest agricultural economies in the world. The Cerrado region, although brilliant, and we're seeing so much money go into agronomy and agriculture. You know, got places like Luiz Eduardo Magalhães that are now having up to 2.5 crops a year. So the demand side is impressive. Sad part with Brazil is the soil is terrible. You can't grow in the Cerrado without fertilizing it, and almost all fertilizer in Brazil comes from somewhere else. So the biggest issue is huge amount of imports and sadly on the geological side, from better deposits. If the average phosphate mine in Brazil is sort of 10%, stuff coming out of Morocco is over 30%, and they're the dominant power. So the upside of fertilizer is the government has called it something of strategic importance. You will get a lot of support with projects. We have a project up in Pará which literally has a line drawn around it on the map saying no one else can touch it. There's not going to be any invasion because it's of strategic importance, because it's a known deposit. There's a lot of support at all levels of government and in the industry and the market. Not an ounce of this will leave Brazil, and there's no reason for it. Like, you have a beautiful domestic market that wants to eat everything you have. So logistics is an issue, but again, if your deposit is close to something like ours, you can win. But so from a market perspective, it's spectacular. It's only going to get better for fertilizer companies because this is fundamental to Brazil. And there's very good support. The downside is competition. right? We still have relatively low-grade deposits in Brazil, very expensive. Logistics are tough. If you're making a chemical fertilizer, you need all sorts of imports. So the majority of companies in Brazil are importing the phosphate, say they're doing the phosphate fertilizer, they're importing the sulfuric acid. They either have to blend it near the ports and bring it into the interior, very expensive, or you have to take those raw materials, bring them into the interior and process them. Both of those things can be very expensive. So, you know, it's about opportunity. If you can find a good deposit in Brazil in a great spot, then you will win, right? If I could find a giant phosphate deposit in the middle of Bahia, I would be or a potash deposit in Bahia, I would be a very happy person. But so yeah, great location. The government is very, very supportive. Local communities are very supportive, and the market is unbelievable. That's why we're there. You know, sometimes you pick a strategy. Our strategy has always been we knew Brazil was where we wanted to go for fertilizers. Are there fertilizers? The answer is yes. We went to go.
And Brazil has a long track record of attracting capital into iron ore and gold specifically, but has only more recently begun to attract large-scale investment into critical minerals. In your analysis, what are the main barriers and what needs to be changed?
Stefan here gave an excellent playbook of what the checklist that we have to have, and that is in place. I think when we look at it, especially ore and all these geopolitical mess, everybody rushing towards ore to guarantee stability. So we'll see the off-takers and the willingness for central banks to buy it, it's there. When we look into phosphate and what it has to do with one of the largest consumer, since it's producing, it's like a power hub for producing all agriculture products, demand offtake is there. So the challenge with the critical minerals is how to guarantee the offtake, how we're going to deal with all the volatility that we have in prices, who's going to secure this volatility. Brazil will not have like a government to support or do like big investments in supporting, sponsoring this on the one hand. So we have to be creative when thinking about that, and that's where many countries are at the moment. So we still have challenges within infrastructure and and risk of executing to bring the power, the logistics, the water, the access to the roads, fiscal and regulatory predictability. We've been discussing this with BMA. For instance, in Brazil, we just launched Rebata, which will be a package of incentives for the EAI, for artificial intelligence. Could we think of something similar for minerals? I think we should. And how to attract, because if we do so, since the resources are there, since you have all these lessons learned, and as our colleague said here, if you get to the right stakeholders, if you do account not only for the federal level, because sometimes policies, it takes time to go, but then you go to the subnationals, and there's a lot of traction in Goiás, in Pará, in Minas Gerais, so we will be able to develop that. And then competition, so everybody's trying this. Can Brazil keep the pace? Can Brazil do this in a creative? And of course, the social acceptance, we're seeing these challenges, we've learned from the past, so how can we work? And we have examples, Meteoric, Clara, Serra Verde, all of them are being able to progress. And although if we look like historically, it takes time for the licensing, but if you really work closely, we're seeing things really getting agility. So I do believe we will get there. There are these pieces to put in order and find the off-takers, bring them closer. So how can we discuss this? But there are things happening. Look for, I'm sure most of you have not heard yet of New Wave, a company in Brazil, which is working with microwaves to really help separate, for instance, rare earth. I am really an optimist, and I do believe we will get there, for instance, for the midstream of processing. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Great. Now a question for the four of you. Where do you see the greatest opportunities to strengthen Brazil-Canada collaboration in mind? Are we talking about capital, technology, governance, or all of the above? If Philippe, we can start with you and then come back.
Sure, of course. So I think it's a combination because Brazil and Canada, they're very complementary jurisdictions. So for instance, capital. Here in Canada, we have an amazing environment to fund early stage projects in the TSX, TSXV environment. In Brazil, as Bruce mentioned earlier, we are giving our first steps towards this, but in Canada we have a culture of investing, putting money at risk in the early stage projects. And Brazil, of course, has geological potential, so this is a good combination. When it comes to technology, as Jeff mentioned before, Canada has high levels of education, and in Canadian mining industry is far more developed than purely Brazilian industry because Canadian companies operate worldwide. So Brazil is one place where Canada invest, the Canadian companies invest. So Canadian companies have experience in the Americas, Africa, Asia, and throughout the world. So they develop technology, and this technology can be used to unlock potential to maximize production in Brazilian operations. And lastly, I think governance, and again, Canadian companies, they work with high standards of governance, so disclosure reports, and all that involves building confidence in the capital markets. So when you translate this to the Brazilian assets, you are really able to maximize value. So again, so I think it's a combination of the three because you have synergies between the two countries.
Great, thank you. Mike, please.
Stephen said earlier on that basically people came to Brazil with their own view on permitting and structure. I always remember Paul Wright, the ex-CEO of Eldorado, saying that Brazil was a graveyard for juniors. And I think in the 2000s it was. There were an awful lot of failed stories in Brazil for a number of reasons. I think one of the, it is that preconceived idea of coming to Brazil with a Canadian or British or an American mentality regarding permitting, etc. And finding it's not harder, it's just different. And I think that's one of the biggest things, which is we worked for a long time understanding how to do this. It's not been easy, but I think that's absolutely essential. I think the other thing which I wanted to say was we're obviously enjoying a moment where we're generating lots of cash now, so we've kind of escaped out of the situation. But the complete lack of juniors, there's an awful lot of lack of juniors in Brazil. The country is dominated by large mining companies with large projects, or the small projects are all in the hands of private companies usually. So it's very difficult, and it's a shame that the geological potential in Brazil, particularly where we are at Tapajós, it's incredible. I'm a geologist, and I didn't answer the question at the very beginning. I didn't include the fact that what's kept me there is just purely the incredible potential of the Tapajós and how much gold is there. But you know, to get more juniors to come to Brazil, I think one of the missing things that we've always found was there's a lot of money in Brazil, particularly in São Paulo, and there's no way of connecting the people that need the money with the people who got the money. And yes, traditionally people would go to those traditional pools of capital, Toronto, London, wherever, and try and find. And then people go, oh, Brazil is difficult, well, you know, the mining laws are difficult, you know, the labor laws are difficult. And really, I think the key is trying to put smaller companies in contact with people with money, particularly in São Paulo. So that's a failing of the broking system, or there is no broking system. Neither is very established here, less so in London, but here for smaller companies or investors which are, companies that are probably going to be a little bit more risk adverse, but putting them in contact with money in São Paulo particularly. So that's something which I think could be addressed and would be very good for growing the junior mining industry in Brazil. And that would be, because there's a lot of deposits for juniors, and the governments tend to think, well, if you're not Vale or you're not Kinross or you're not huge, you are private and basically irrelevant. But there's an amazing opportunity in Brazil for small companies to actually have a very, very significant contribution to the mining industry.
Thank you, Mike. Peter.
There's a few areas we could work together, ESG governance especially, but I think the two areas to me that would really, where this relationship can be beneficial and can unlock quite a bit of value. One is, further to what these guys say, capital markets. A lot of these projects are private, a lot are too small. Guys that list here are still too small to be listed in Brazil. There's no incentive to take risk on juniors. The Canadian market, at least you've got flow through, right? That brings a lot of, some not great projects, but that allows a lot of funding to small guys in the early stage, right? You take that risk, tax benefit goes to the investor. So, working with, B3 or, in Brazil and seeing, or with the government, see, is there something, if you really want to develop these minerals, you need to encourage people to spend, you need to encourage people to invest, but you have to get those investors to want to give the money, so you need to help them on the downside. So that's one. I like the exchanges. I think Guillaume left, but I do like what they're doing. I do think there's opportunity in working those capital markets. I know when we were getting no success in Toronto, we went and listed on the B3 and the thing just blew up. It was a fundamental driver. And I think one of the reasons, it was gold, so it was a little easier then, and it was currency hedge or inflation hedge. But it was an opportunity to invest in Brazil. And I don't know how many of you spend time going to London and New York and places marketing Brazil, and half the pitch is why Brazil, and people don't understand how to work there, or can only think of negatives, and the more we can get the Brazilian market involved, the better. And then I think the other side is when we talk critical metals, less so with phosphates, I can sell it all in country, is we're going to process the stuff. Brazil and Canada have a great opportunity. They have an amazing mineral endowment. They have incredible technical skills and education, right? We're working together already in so many things. Some of Canada's biggest companies were born out of Brazil, right? Like the Brookfields of the world. So what about that? That's billions of dollars of infrastructure. You want to mine critical metals, fine, but who's going to process it? If you want rare earths, great, I got a rare earth concentrate. Where is it going to go from there? That is a massive investment, and that is an area where sort of Canada and Brazil could work together. There's strategic advantages in looking at that sort of thing. Yeah.
Great.
I couldn't agree more. So actually it's just adding upon and acknowledging these things, because there has been an MOU between TSX and B3 to start discussing this. But definitely there needs to be efforts to scale, to accelerate, because behind that there is a historical difference in mentality towards pro-risk or averse to risk, and how especially mid-size or individual investors really bet their money, which is different from Canada and Brazil. But there is a role, so financing structures, and you're right, Mike, when you're saying there's a lot of money in São Paulo. I was there last week, and it's not a problem of lack of money, so really showcasing and going to road shows and really, let me show you this project and how this can come to life. And then and definitely there is still not, but I would really like to see moving forward Brazil-Canada MOU really evolving, and with really maybe sandboxes of junior minings and specific projects. We're doing this for some projects, and we're seeing how this can be successful and really moving this forward, and especially towards the processing. Everybody's trying all over the world, but definitely Canada and Brazil are neutral mid-sized countries and have a lot of synergies in this way. So I believe there's ground for us to discuss further this. Thank you.
So moving on to final questions, Stephen, what is the one message you would give to a Canadian investor considering a mining project in Brazil for the very first time?
I'd say firstly, come. It's one of the better opportunities, but if you're going to come,
I like that one.
Find great local partners. Period. Find good groups to work with, find a local team, go from there.
Especially lawyers.
Sadly, yes.
And Felipe, keeping with the lawyers, what is the key legal advice you would give to a Canadian investor considering investing in Brazil mining sector for the very first time?
I would say early stakeholder engagement. I mean, do not treat licensing, community relations, stakeholder dialogue as boxes to the ticket. after geological validation, because in the past, that's how it worked. Companies are so focused on spending money on the ground, they kind of neglected this other part of the equation, and then they struggle to develop their projects. And they do realize that's quite difficult to go to the board and say, look, you are a junior exploration company, you just raised $10 million, give me a percentage of your budget to promote institutional dialogue, to be present with the local community, and the board first answer is, no, I need to spend money on the ground. But Brazil rewards preparation. So it is very important in my experience, projects that succeeded to progress to Brazil were the projects that put together all the elements at the same time at the very early stage of the project. So he advises early stakeholder engagement. So put together a good team, do not focus only on drilling on the ground, prepare the ground in the various areas that you have to prepare to develop and advance your project.
Great, thank you, Felipe. Mike, if you could change one thing about Brazil's regulatory or business environment tomorrow, what would that be?
I probably for us, Steve said earlier on, the permitting route is, the framework is brilliant, it's great, you know, and in the south of Brazil, Minas Gerais, Goiás, those states, works fine, Mato Grosso. But in Pará, it's problematic at times, it's challenging. We have multiple bodies that are at state level and some at federal level, and they often work in isolation, and sometimes conflicting advice and conflicting needs. So that would be great if that was, they didn't work so much in isolation. That would certainly make life a lot easier for us. And I guess that's why I went back to the original point, you know, why we're in Pará, where we've got the scars, you know, after a long time, and kind of now know how to do things. So it's having learnt it, we're benefiting from it. But yes, a little bit more communication, cross-communication between the government organisations would be something I'd like to see improve.
Thank you. And Rafaela, just to close, what concrete progress do you expect to see in the Brazil-Canada mining relationship over the next, let's say, 12 months?
I would definitely say a real strong partnership, starting with some form of agreement that could go towards like selecting projects and seeing how can we move them forward, and really thinking jointly of win-win situations and bringing them alive.
Great. That's it, folks. Thank you so much. Peter, we like to really thank you all for being here. Thank you, panelists, for the great exposition. Thank you.
Folks, can we get a photograph of the panelists? Sure. So, Jesse's going to take it with them. Well, they're doing the final photograph. Folks, you're all heroes. You're my heroes for staying to the bitter end. But here's the thing. I think we might have gotten the best panel at the very last. First of all, you're snappy speakers. I love all of that. But they really did share some insights that I think are valuable, are important, and really demonstrate that the future of mining, especially the relationship between Canada and Brazil, needs to have continuous contact, early adoption, and a full understanding that procedures and all the things are already there. We just have to act on them. And everybody should brush up with their Portuguese. Anyway, thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you very much for being here. We're very grateful too. And folks, we have Brazil Mining Day tomorrow, so please come to that. I want you to be sure and really see the opportunities that are there in Brazil. So thank you very much.
Thank you.